Hi, HR Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives in the world's leading global brands. Today, we have a special guest on the show. We're joined by Cameron Herold, who's a founder of the COO Alliance and author of several best-selling books, including Meetings Suck and The Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I missed one of your most recent books, which is obviously Vivid Vision, which I'm super excited about as well. But before we jump into all of that, tell everyone a little bit more about yourself personally and your background and journey to where we are today.
Sure. I've played the second in command role 3 times for a few different brands. And I was also groomed to be an entrepreneur. So I'm a little bit of a dichotomy between a very entrepreneurial, probably second in command. I got involved with a group called College Pro Painters, which ended up being the largest residential house painting company on the planet. And what a lot of people don't know about College Pro is every year we would go out and recruit, hire, and train 800 franchisees. And then we would train those 800 franchisees to go out and recruit, hire, and train 8,000 employees, 8,000 painters. And we would do all that in 4 months. So we would literally recruit, hire, train, and onboard 8,800 people every year. And I was in the top 60 people of that company globally. I ended up hiring Kimball Musk to be a franchisee for me back in 1993.
Really?
Yeah, and then his cousin, Peter Reeve, who built Solar City, also worked for me in 1993. So we became operationally some of the best in the world in the recruiting space. I left that company around 20 years ago, and I was the president of a private currency company. Built that company up and sold it. And then I joined my best friend to grow his business called 1-800-GOT-JUNK. I came in as the chief operating officer, bit of an over title in that day because I was only the 14th employee. But when I left 6.5 years later, we had 3,100 employees system-wide. We'd gone from 2 million to 106 million in revenue. And we also ranked as the number 2 company in all of Canada to work for and had twice ranked number 1 in British Columbia to work for. So I started doing speaking events. I've done paid speaking events in 26 countries on 6 continents, mostly about how to turn your company into a magnet for great talent. So I'm always around that culture space. And then I've also coached about 200 companies, real companies, typically in the 50 to 500 employee range is my zone. But I've coached the CEO of Sprint. I coached the second in command of Sprint for 18 months. I coached a monarchy in the Middle East. And I've coached some large technology companies. So I've worked behind the scenes, and my nickname is the CEO Whisperer because I tend to work with the CEO, CHO, CHR. I work with the leadership team on how to build great companies, and that's really my zone.
Wow, that's a lot to take in as well. I feel like I've got a long way to go in my career.
Yeah, so whatever. Well, we're similar as we were talking earlier. Like you really have focused in on the CHRO space, and then I have this second in command space. I have a podcast called the Second in Command Podcast, and then I have the COO Alliance. And I just got tired of going to all these events that were for entrepreneurs. I would show up at a YPO event or an entrepreneurs organization event, Genius Network or War Room or, The Gathering. I was always at these places that were filled with entrepreneurs, but I wanted to talk about recruiting for 2 days. And the CEO would be like, we got to get all the right people on the bus. And they thought that was a discussion about recruiting. I mean, we didn't even talk about recruiting. And so I really wanted a space for that second in command to really get into the details of how to grow companies.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because over the past few years, the CHROs have stepped into that second in command role. So in the future, you'd see CEO, CFO, and now, not sure if you're seeing it, I'm seeing it every day now. It's more CEO, CHRO, then CFO. Correct.
Well, what's interesting about the COO role, and Harvard wrote an article about this about 16 years ago called The Misunderstood Role of the COO. The second in command is merely the yin and yang to the CEO. So it could be a CHRO, could be the second in command. It could be a COO, could be the second in command. It could be a CFO. It's whoever would run the company if the CEO was sick for 6 months. That's really the second in command. So really, if I was to retitle the COO Alliance, it would be the second in command alliance because we have lots of different titles. We've got president, we've got co-founder, we've got CHRO, we've got CFO, but they're the ones that are really the yin and yang to the CEO.
Yeah, great point you made there as well, because Shane, who's my co-founder, his title is COO. and he literally runs the business. So whilst I'm running around my crazy ideas, innovating and executing, doing these shows, he's the one running in the background and making sure that my crazy ideas come to life and that people get paid at the end of the month and everything's running. And he's the real, the foundation of our business that allows us to operate. And my kind of role in the business is more around hiring great talent, which was kind of half of my role. And the other half is basically around sales, marketing, and content, which is what I just love to do. I love being.
Well, and what's interesting, what you just touched on is the roles that you have are the stuff that you're good at and you love to do.
Yes.
And then Shane's role is the stuff that he's good at and that he loves to do. And you don't touch each other's stuff.
No.
But here's what's interesting. Some COOs have marketing underneath them. Some don't. Some COOs have finance underneath them. Some don't. It's really dependent on how do you divide and conquer and then build that really strong functioning 2-person team.
Mm-hmm. I wish we knew that earlier on. I'll be honest. We went to, there's an author called Nick Craig. And he does a lot of work with kind of Unilever, for example. He's trained 15,000 of Unilever's top execs around kind of how to align your purpose with your business. And he invited us to a sort of 2-day retreat where they had kind of literally billionaires, CEOs of the biggest brands in the world. It was a private, kind of signed non-disclosures, etc. And I got invited along, couldn't afford to be there, by the way. If it was just he was being nice to invite me, and myself and Shane turned up to this day going, "Oh, we're way out of our depth right now." And we over the day we kind of explored a lot of the things we're talking about: our why, our purpose, our vision, our role, and kind of looking back from childhood and how that shaped what we do now. And we realized that we were both trying to do so many different roles in the business that we weren't enjoying and that weren't optimal for what we do.
It's really so important to operate from that zone. And people think it's just because of a famous book or a famous talk, but I'll give you an example of how core this truly is. So we've all heard of Simon Sinek, who wrote the book Start With Why, and his famous TEDx talk that went viral and then got him onto the main TED stage later. What people don't know is Simon actually flew out to Vancouver to meet Brian and I in 2003, 5 years before his book was released. 5 years before anyone on the planet had really known of Simon, because he read about us in Fortune magazine and how strong our culture was. We were in the physical print edition of Fortune. So he flew out and spent a day with Brian and I. He stayed at my home. We had dinner together. We became really good friends. He was on our board for 18 months. He spoke at our conferences, worked with us in marketing. So we knew Simon very, very well in the early days. Well before his book was even written. And he was at my home one night and we were talking about what my purpose is as an entrepreneur or as a CEO. And he said, why do you do what you do? I said, I just love helping entrepreneurs. And he goes, go all the way back. So I went back to when I was with College Pro Painters and I was hiring these franchisees, when I hired Kimball Musk back in 93 or my first batch of franchisees in 1989. He said, why did you love it so much? I said, I loved helping them and I loved showing them the shortcuts. And I loved taking these raw kids who were, 21 years old and helping them be successful. He goes, you just love helping entrepreneurs. And I said, yeah, my core purpose today is helping entrepreneurs make their dreams happen.
Tell us some more about the latest book. Right now, it feels like we've been catapulted 5 years ahead into the future. We're talking about the future of work and remote work and these all things we're all talking about. It's here now. And there's companies I'm speaking to, just before COVID, I remember speaking to a CHRO of a 100,000 plus employee company. And they said, Chris, we've got a plan the next 5 years to remove our employees remote. And they did it in 2 weeks when COVID hit.
Incredible, right? I was talking to one of our members of the CO Alliance, is the second in command for the American Association of Retired People. And they have something like 4,000 employees and they were remote within a week as well. And they said they never, ever would have said yes to let people work from home. And then all of a sudden they're like, don't come to work. And now they're saying, don't come to the office until June. So another 10 months. So the Vivid Vision is one of my most recent books. And the idea behind Vivid Vision is this. A Vivid Vision is a 4 or 5 page document that describes your company in vivid detail of what the company looks like, what it acts like, what it feels like, how it operates, but it's describing the company in its finished state 3 years in the future. almost as if you traveled into a time machine. You hopped into a DeLorean with, Michael J. Fox, and you traveled out into the future, and you got out of your time machine December 31st, let's say 2023, and you walked around your company and you described operations, maybe 3 or 4 bullet points. You described marketing, you described IT, you described engineering, you described customer engagement, you described employee engagement, you describe what the media is writing about you. You describe your meeting rhythms and your leadership and your pulse and your culture. You describe it as if it's come true, and in such detail that your leadership team can now figure out, how do we make each sentence come true?
Yeah.
Almost like if you were going to build a home, I could go get the best contractor in the city and say, come build me a house. Here's $2 million. And I could leave for a year and come back and they'd build me an amazing home, but it probably wouldn't look anything like what I wanted because I didn't give them enough of my vision. And unfortunately, what we've been doing in companies right now is thinking that one sentence mission statement is enough to align people. But all we did is mash up 6 words into a sentence and say, go team. But we didn't describe the culture. We didn't describe the meeting rhythms. We didn't describe the engagement. So the idea is to have the CEO or the head of each business area write a vivid vision for their business area. But in this case, you get the CEO to craft the vision for what the company looks like, acts like, and feels like. And then the leadership team gets to figure out how to make it come true and when to make each part of it come true. Almost like building a home, you put the foundational parts in first, then you put up the electrical and the walls and the plumbing. In building your business, it's got to be deep around vision, deep around core purpose, deep around core values, deep around the BHAG, deep around all the people systems, and then you kind of build out from there. The problem is that most companies aren't clear on their vivid vision, so all their employees are figuring it out as they go. And then the entrepreneur is upset that the employees don't have the same level of intuition. The only reason they don't have your intuition is because you're the only one that can see the darn vision because it's all in your head. So what the idea is to get everybody loaded in the direction you want us to go. And if we need to move or pivot, we all move with that new vivid vision that you're going to launch every 3 years that keeps directing the organization.
So in the book, is it you sharing examples of how other organizations are doing this?
I don't only know how to teach stuff by being very tactical and giving the very specific examples. So like as an example, in Good to Great, they talk about, your hedgehog concept, but they don't teach you how to do it. Or they talk about level 5 leadership. They don't teach you how to do it. In Vivid Vision, I give you the step-by-step instructions of how to craft one, how to roll one out, how to get engagement around it, all of that step-by-step. Because I do it in the franchising world where I would teach it so that franchisees could deploy. It's the only way I know how to write.
That's the type of book that I like to read because a lot of especially of our listeners as well, if I ask them what's the biggest takeaway from that podcast, they always say the episodes where leaders share tactical, actionable advice.
Well, let me give you a really good one that I think everybody who's listening needs to dive into. Everyone listening should buy the book Meetings Suck. And I'm not trying to sell books. Like, buy the book. If you hate it, I'll pay you for it. Like, that's my offer, right? Just go buy the book Meetings Suck for $15. 30% of Meetings Suck teaches you how to run meetings. 30% teaches people how to attend them, how to participate, how to get engagement in meetings. And then the last third of the book is what meetings you need to run a highly successful, strong culture company. But the book Meetings Suck is written for every employee at every company to read. And the reason is every employee currently spends between 1 and 2 hours a day in meetings. So they're already spending between 12 and 25% of their day in meetings. If the average employee makes $50,000 a year and they're spending 12 to 25% of their time, that means you're paying them $6,000 to $12,000 to go do something they've never had any training in. And the reason all the employees at all these companies complain that meetings suck is nobody knows anything about them.
Yeah.
So you know why people show up late for meetings?
Because they cram in to prepare for it just before it?
Pretty close. Everybody books everything in their calendar back to back. So we book stuff from 5 o'clock till 6 o'clock, 6 till 8 o'clock, 8 till 8:30, 8:30 till 8:45, and we have no gap. But you can't teach people to put a gap or a buffer between meetings. So what I do is I finish every meeting and I finish every phone call 5 minutes prior to the scheduled ending time. And that gives everybody time to walk down the hall, talk to our assistant, get a cup of coffee, go to the bathroom, sit down, pick up the phone and say, hi, I'm exactly on time for my 9 o'clock meeting, which shows that you live your core values. I also teach everybody in companies that when you show up saying, sorry, I'm late, What you're really saying is, F you, I'm selfish, I'm disrespectful, my time's more valuable than yours. So the only way around that pain is to finish everything 5 minutes early.
What are some of the other common mistakes that people make?
Over inviting people, feeling like you need to invite all these people because I'm going to hurt their feelings. The reality is they hate you because you invited them to the meeting. They'd rather sit at their desk.
We've been in those meetings, haven't we?
Well, because then you invite them to a meeting, you don't get them to talk. That's why the book Meetings Suck talks about how to pick who to bring to a meeting, how to get engagement, and then how to get them feeling good when they leave the meeting that they were involved. So it teaches you how to opt out of meetings. And then I also say no agenda, no attenda. Like if you're booking me for a meeting, what are we covering? In what order are we covering it? How many minutes are we going to spend on each agenda item? And then I can tell based on the agenda if I should be there. And whoever's booking the meeting can tell based on the agenda how many meetings or how many minutes they need to book it for. Because if you look at the agenda and you go, wow, it's only 22 minutes, then book it for 25 minutes. Why are you booking an hour meeting to cover 22 minutes worth of stuff? True. The problem is that most executives have never had any training on meetings. So then they walk around saying their meetings suck. Like even when I've known Elon Musk for 25 years. I was a reference for Elon in his first round of funding for Zip2 in January of 95. They talk about College Pro in his book. Elon sent a tweet out about a year ago and said, if you're in a shitty meeting, stand up and leave the meeting. And I sent him a text message. I'm like, no, fix the root cause. If you fix meetings, your employees won't be in the shitty meetings that they have to leave. So don't tell them to leave a shitty meeting. Teach them how to fix them so they're not running shitty meetings.
A few CHROs recently have told me they purposely turn up for meetings late, and just bear with me. And I was like, really? Because they don't want some of their employees to feel like they always have to be there on time because they may be looking after their kids at home. And you're in a different environment now where trying to be on time exactly every time is feasible.
I think it's a massive cop-out. What I would rather do is have people live the core values. And if somebody's going to be late because of their kids, they can quickly send a Slack message. They can quickly send a text message and say, I'm going to be late for the meeting because of, and then we understand the human dynamic that we're living within right now. We understand the human suffering. Like the reality is, I teach this as well, that every single employee in every single company is struggling with something. Parent who's sick, or a kid who's got cancer, or a divorce we're going through, or an addiction somebody's struggling with. Everybody's struggling. So when leaders are empathetic, they'll understand if somebody has a problem. But if somebody is late for every single meeting, it's just disrespectful. It's not actually a reason. You're allowing disrespect. You're allowing people to break the core values. For me, core values are so important that you don't break them, right? But if my core values are respect the individual, then I understand why that person might be late. But if they're late 5 meetings in a row, it's not because of kids, right? Yeah. It's because we didn't teach them how to plan. We didn't teach them how to organize their time. We didn't teach them how to have buffers. We didn't teach them how to delegate more. So the key is to groom our employees and grow our employees, but not that's a cop-out. Here's another one that I talk about in Meetings Suck as well. When we run meetings, every single person checks their phone at the door or turns their phone on Do Not Disturb when they're in the meeting if they're over Zoom. The reason is that if you're so darn busy that you've got to be checking your email or doing something, don't come to the meeting. Just go do your other work. Like pick what to focus on. But if I'm in a meeting, I'm going to focus on this. If you're having sex, you're not sitting checking your email. If you're running a marathon race, you're not checking your email. If you're in a swim race, like if you're playing tennis with your buddies, you're not checking, focus and don't allow anybody to break that rule. But the only way you can allow people to stay focused is to book meetings for half the time you first think about booking them for, invite based on the agenda, make sure people understand why we're there, and then break quickly and control the chatter, right?
Yeah. We'll just say, because one of the big challenges I'm hearing, and I'm actually personally faced this, is that collaboration, creative collaboration over a Zoom call. It's really, I find it really tough. I actually now have those, make sure we schedule those face-to-face with my team. It just feels like that buzz, that energy, that sort of aha moments in a environment.
There's 2 really good tools that people can check out for online collaboration. One is called Miro, Miro, which is an online whiteboarding tool. And another one is called Stormboard, which allows some onboard collaboration. Both of those are really interesting tools for collaboration. If I have meetings over Zoom, people have to have their video on and they have to put their cell phone down. And then my rule is, look, If you're so busy, you have other project work, I'd rather you do the other project work. We only have 3 inputs in our companies. Every company has the 3 same inputs: people, time, and money. We only have 250 operating days of the year. We've only got so many employees. We only have so much money. We need to get the highest ROI off those 3 things. And if some of my people feel I don't really want to come to the meeting because I have more impactful work, cool, go do the other impactful work. The people who do come to the meetings will get that work done. That's a real strong point when an employee wants to opt out of a meeting. We shouldn't take offense to that. That's a really good sign. It means they're balancing their priorities to get the highest ROI. Yeah. Or it means that you don't know how to run good meetings, so learn how to run good meetings.
Interesting. I think that's a cultural thing there as well, right?
Well, I've coached, it's cultural in terms of a company, but I've also worked with companies in 26 countries. So I've worked with companies, in Asia where they're more diminutive and more quiet and they don't want to offend. I've worked with clients in Saudi Arabia. I've coached clients in Geneva where they're very like a Swiss watch. Like my clients in Switzerland, they're never late for anything. It's like, God, like
always on time.
Like they get it done, right? And then I have clients in the UK that are funny. I was trying to run a 7-minute daily huddle and they said, our huddles are taking too long. I said, why?
7 minutes.
Well, we sit down, we pour tea. I'm like, what? You don't break for tea. That's not a daily huddle.
No, we used to have like a morning stand-up meeting for like 5 minutes with my sales team, and then we're just ready to go. Something quick, simple.
We did an all-company stand-up meeting at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. They've been running our daily huddle for 7 minutes now for the last 19 years.
Wow.
And it just keeps everybody on that quick pulse. We do it at 11 o'clock in the morning. It's the first time in the day when the energy level drops is at 11 o'clock. The second time is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So both of those times are really good parts to have, like the huddles or adrenaline meetings. When you get everybody together and you share good news, you talk about missing systems, you share your numbers, you have your trend for the month, and then you break, everybody has that pulse and that energy level. I always joke about American football versus soccer. And I said, American football, before every play, they have a huddle, right? They have a huddle, they have a plan, they do the play, they come back, they debrief, they have another plan. And soccer players just run around on the field for 90 minutes. It's no wonder the score is so much higher in football as everybody's running around.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that.
What's that?
I said, I've never thought about it like that because I've always seen the huddles, but it makes a lot of sense. They only get to have a chat at half time in football. Yeah. That's it.
They're just running around being busy.
What inspired this new book, by the way? Because you've written so many books right now, and I always love understanding, is it something you're hearing within your community? What was the pain point that you kind of identified?
Well, my BHAG, my big, hairy, audacious goal is to replace vision statements with vivid visions worldwide. And the reason for that is the 1-sentence vision statement doesn't actually do anything. So how are we possibly aligning our employees in these companies with 1 sentence? It doesn't work. But when you read a vivid vision, like if our listeners read the vivid vision for the COO Alliance, they would have more clarity on what I'm building than what their company is building. That it becomes that real aligning point where every employee starts making decisions with their own intuition. Here's a good example. Let's say that you had 3 guys out making bricks and they're all sitting out on the dirt sidewalk and they're all making bricks. And you ask the first guy, what are you doing? He goes, I make bricks. His job is to make bricks. You ask the second guy, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm building a wall and I get to make bricks to build this wall. And they asked the third guy, what are you doing? He said, we're building a cathedral to worship God and I get to make the bricks to build the left wall of the cathedral. Who has more meaning in their work? The person so most companies just have employees that know their job is to make bricks. Some companies have a vision statement and now they know they're making bricks to build a wall. But if you actually understand the purpose and you can see the vision of what you're building, you show up and you make bricks for 100 years to build this kind of cathedral like the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona.
Yeah. It's interesting to say that because I'm a visual person and I mentioned that kind of purpose to impact kind of retreat that I went on. At the end of the 2-3 days, you have to write your vision statement and your plan for the next 5 years. And you sit down and you kind of write out the steps and the plan, align with the vision of what you're talking about. And I wrote mine out and it just didn't resonate with me. And I was like, I'm just not connecting with it's like a bunch of bullet points. So what I did is I spent the next half of I did that in a couple of hours and I had 3 hours left. So what I ended up doing is getting a huge piece of paper. It was kind of wider than my set right now in front of me. And I drew the vision. So it was like, I grew up as an artist. So I painted it. I had all the different pens in the room. I kind of had like a river, which kind of signified where we're going. I had the stops along the way. I had the bridge we had to overcome. I had, this represents some employees. And I wish I could show you it, but it's actually packed away because we're moving offices.
No, you've got to pull that out. And then that has to become part of your vivid vision. So
it's on the wall. It's literally always on the wall in our office. So you walk in every day, you can see it on the wall.
So here's partial what you just said and why the written vivid vision is so powerful in addition to the picture one. A picture says 1,000 words. So when somebody says, what does that tree represent? You would actually explain that in the vivid vision so then they can read it, because then you can take every sentence literally and then you can figure out, how do I make that sentence come true? How do we make this sentence come true? How do we make this sentence come true? The picture is a good representation, but the written version of it that then can be shared with your customers, your suppliers, your stakeholders, your bankers, your employees. You want to talk about recruiting? When you share a vivid vision document, the 4 or 5 page document of what your company looks like in the future with potential employees, they all either want to work for you or it's become like a magnet. It's pushed them away, which is amazing because now you're only starting to recruit and interview the people that actually know where we're going.
Yeah, super important. I just feel like one without the other just didn't work for me. Just having the written version, I was like, I just wasn't. It felt like it was only 50% of the way. And then when I had
the written version for you wasn't complete yet. You just had the bullet points. Now the key is to take the bullet points and write it into a story. But what I love is the vivid vision gets drafted, and then every employee does a vision board for themselves of how they'll make that vivid vision come true. Yeah. Well, what happens with vision and with vivid visions is when all of your employees have that vivid vision ingrained because they've read it every month or they've read it every 2 months and it's talked about all the time and it's reinforced, your employees start having that same level of intuition. So they start making decisions based on this subconscious mind of all of the ideas. So the vision of what you're building for the company is so clear to everybody that they start making decisions aligned with that without even realizing they are. So that's why I wrote the book, Vivid Vision, was for leaders to actually understand how to properly articulate a vision inside of the organization, because the old way never worked.
Yeah, I think I've got a lot of work to do based on what you just told me in terms of articulating it in our business, because what's in here, I need to get it out of here. I remember when we first started the company, I said to Shane, we bought this microphone. It was our first purchase. And I said to Shane, we're going to have the #1 HR podcast in the world. His exact response was, who wants to listen to you, Chris? That's his and I said that to him. And I, from that day, it was like in my head, I was like, it doesn't matter what it takes. So I'm going to make it happen. And I think because that was ingrained in my subconscious so strong, you are right. The actions that I took just led that, the people I met, the actions I took, the activities I was doing, the work I was doing just led to the show coming to life and growing and growing and growing too. In terms of
I know one of the reasons why your podcast is so well listened to, and even why your HR group is becoming so powerful, is you actually understand that HR is not supposed to be policies and procedures and boring. I mean, there's a component of that, right?
Yes.
But to build a great company, it has to be a little bit more than a business and a little bit less than a religion. It has to be in that zone of a cult. And you actually reek of culture, right? In a good way.
Yeah, love that. So
and it's also like culture. I had a client one time, they said, we don't really have a culture. I said, well, then that's your culture. It's kind of beige. It's like, and it's not even, I joke, I said, it's not even Martha Stewart designer beige. It's like boring beige. Like, at least get good beige. If you're going to be beige, at least be nice beige, right?
Yeah. That's quite a strange statement, isn't it? We don't have a culture, or by definition, that's your culture.
That's your culture. It's just a very boring meh. It's interesting. Like, I've been to the head office of Google and I've been to the Chelsea office of Google. I've been to the head office of Microsoft. The difference between Microsoft and Google is quantum, because Google decided that culture was critical and Microsoft never really had the discussion.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I've been to both of those headquarters as well, and LinkedIn and Lego, and you are right. It's like a stark difference.
And look at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, right? I mean, why was our culture so strong? Why were we #2 in Canada to work for? We were a garbage company. You have to do a lot of work to make garbage sexy. Why when we built Gerber Auto Collision and Boyd Auto Body was our culture so strong? We fixed cars that had been in accidents. How about at College Pro Painters? Like we were watching paint dry for real.
Literally.
Right? But it was a cult. College Pro was a cult. And
how did you do that then? Obviously, I'm sure everyone's listening right now is interested in understanding what are some of the things that you did in those organizations that fostered that culture.
The cult. So and my mentor who built College Pro is the one that taught me about more than a business, less than a religion, to get in that zone of a cult. So branding everything, right? Naming things like your rooms with fun names, naming your meeting rhythms with fun names, naming systems, using acronyms, kind of creating that so that people on the outside don't understand, crafting strong visions to attract people in, creating a space and an environment that creates an energy and a hub that attracts people in, and then recognizing the laws of quantum mechanics and attracting more and more of those energy vibrating people and getting rid of the negative energy people that actually suck, the energy vampires, the cancerous people, because those two things don't mix. But if your organization is filled with high energy people and low energy people, or real driving athletes and grumpy negative smokers, like that stuff doesn't work. So it's getting rid of the wrong people and bringing in more of the great people, aligning them with vision. And then I think it's an obsession about caring for them and growing them. I picture the org chart upside down where the CEO is at the bottom, supporting the C-level, supporting the VPs, supporting the managers, supporting the employees, supporting the customers, right? Like an inverted triangle. Yeah. And then on one side of the triangle is our core values, and on the other side is our core purpose. And we build the company inside those two areas. Most companies won't obsess about core values, but to build an amazing company, you've got to have 4 or 5 core values. They have to be short, easy to understand phrases with no explanation necessary. And you have to be willing to fire people who break them. So you recruit and interview people and hire people who live them already. You fire people who break them, and then you reinforce them. And that's where the cult starts.
I noticed that many companies that operate in that same realm have some really interesting interview questions. And I'm just wondering if there's any particular interview questions that you had in those organizations that you asked to see if those people interviewing align with your values or culture, or is it different depending on what your values are?
No, I have a system for it that I took from a group called Top Grading. So we use TORC, which is the threat of reference check. And the idea with a threat of reference check is, let's say that I was, what did you say your second command's name was again? Sean? Shane. Yeah. So Chris, if I asked Shane, when you break, core value number 1, deliver what you promise, when would Shane say that you routinely break, deliver what you promise? And I'm going to ask you 5 minutes of questions about breaking, deliver what you promise, what Shane would say. And I'm going to say, what would Shane say if I said about, respect the individual? When would he say that you don't respect people? And I'm going to drill hard on that. And then I'm going to say, what would Shane say about, so I'll ask under the threat of reference check, what Shane would say about each core value. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to say, well, you also mentioned that Kelly used to work with this woman, Kelly. When would Kelly say that you break core value number 1? When would Kelly say that you break? And I would going to go into the threat for 10 different people. So I might spend up to 2 hours asking you what 10 different people would say about you based on the core values.
Even me. You're not even asking me the question. You're asking that's interesting. I
don't care what you say. I want to know. And you're so worried that I'm going to call them because and what I do is I say, by the way, you gave me the names of 10 people. By Monday, I want the email addresses and phone numbers.
Oh, no.
At least 8 of the 10. C players will run away and you'll never hear from them. B players will give you 8 of the 10. A players will give you all 10. And then you say, but now that I've got their emails and phone numbers, what would they say? You're sweating bullets.
What's that system called? I love that.
It's called TORC, threat of reference check. Yeah, I talk about it in Double.
Oh, I've never heard of that before, but I can see immediately you'd get rid of so many time wasters.
We had to be good at this at College Pro Painters because we didn't have time. We only had 17 weeks to do 100% of our revenue. We did all our revenue between May 1st and August 31st. And to hire 800 franchisees and then let them hire 8,000 painters, we didn't have time to screw this up. So we became operationally world-class at recruiting, interviewing, and selection.
Yeah, and you use that same method for every wow.
Yeah, I had somebody one time and they said they were really good in time management. I said, really? Walk me through your system. And they explained priorities, A's and B's, numbering the A's, figuring out the time, putting it in calendars. They really knew time management. And then I said, where, and this was back in the days of physical day timers, right? I said, well, where's your day timer? They said, oh, it's out in the car. I said, oh, cool. And I said, everything you just described to me is in your day timer. And they said, yeah, all your annual goals, yep, all in my day timer. I said, cool. Can you go grab your day timer for me and bring it in? And they said, why? I said, I just want to look at it and see. You can hold it across the table. I don't need to see the details, but I just want to see that you practice what you know how to do, because I don't want somebody who knows the theory. I want someone who knows how to do it and does it.
We all know the theory of everything, but whether you do it's another thing.
So I made them go out to their car to get their day timer.
Did they get it?
I've never seen them since. Because they knew how to do something.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you they didn't do it.
Yeah.
In the interviewing world, I only want to hire people that are the right culture fit, the people that are obsessed with my vivid vision, and the people that have done what I need them to do. Because then I have a much higher prediction of their success because they've already done it. Like when I built 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I'd already built 2 other franchise companies prior to that. So me coming into 1-800-GOT-JUNK as the COO, for the first 5 years, it was easy. Only when we got to about 3,000 employees was I starting to pull my hair out.
It's interesting because I love asking the whole question of, what's one of the recent books you've read, and people just throw out any book. And I'm like, great, what did you take away from that? Especially when I've read it and they're like, I'm like, oh, so you've not really read it then.
or they're reading a book a week thinking they're learning instead of applying their learning to something they actually want to improve on that quarter.
Oh, 100. I had 5 chief learning officers on our last panel, our summit last week. And after the call, we was talking about that, about sort of learning versus execution. And I said, which they thought was quite strange, that I said, I've stopped learning recently. And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm focusing on executing. Because before I was just consuming 1 million podcasts a day, reading books, and I wasn't doing anything with it. So I had all of this knowledge, but I was like, it doesn't matter unless it's actually, and then who said it to me? It doesn't matter unless it ships.
Oh, Seth Godin.
Seth Godin said it. Yeah. In his newest book, it doesn't matter unless it ships, whether it's physical, or virtual, whatever it may, a digital product.
When I talk about something similar to that as well, which is momentum creates momentum, right? That the reality is perfection inside of a company doesn't matter. Having everything done perfectly doesn't matter. What matters is getting it done and out the door. So people have talked about minimum viable product. I call it minimum viable everything. Just get it done and get it out, because that getting it out the door, that momentum will create more momentum. And then there's not a problem that exists that a check can't solve. If you focus on growing revenue and your gross margins, you can buy your way out of all those problems later. But your employee engagement is key to revenue growth. You have to obsess about really, really happy, engaged employees. And then I believe that employees are climbing up 2 ladders, right? Imagine if you were climbing up 2 really tall ladders, and 1 foot was on a skills ladder and 1 foot was on a confidence ladder. Our job as leaders is to grow their skills so they go up a little bit, grow their confidence so they go up a little bit, grow their skills, they go up a little bit, confidence go up. But if you're not praising them enough, if you're not coaching them enough, if you're not removing obstacles, you're shaking that confidence ladder, which makes it impossible for their skills to get any better because they got 1 foot shaking and they're holding on for dear life.
Well, listen, I know I've got to let you go at some point, Cameron, but really enjoyed our conversation. I think I'd like to do another hour. But before we wrap up, if there's sort of one kind of parting takeaway you want the HR audience to take away, what would that be? And then where's the best place they can connect with you, reach out, grab a copy of the book, etc.?
Sure. Well, the COO Alliance, they should definitely check out. They should also check out the Second in Command podcast. All of my 5 books are available on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. I guess the parting note that I would leave everybody is that none of us are getting out of this alive. We're all just walking each other home, right? That this is just what we do to make money. And maybe if we can relax a little and have some fun a little and hold hands and sing and have a good time while we're doing this, because this is just what we do to pay the bills, right? This is not, and none of our employees, this isn't their reason for being, right? And we need to remember that everybody there is struggling. If we can just help them have a good time and help them, connect with their passions and have fun and take some time off, because we're never going to get caught up.
Especially now more than ever in this environment we find ourselves in. Well, look, thank you so much for everyone listening. I'll link everything below, so links to Cameron's website, podcast. So don't worry, we'll make it easy for you as always. If you're new here, please like, comment, share, tag in a colleague as well that you feel will benefit from the episode. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your day, Cameron, and I look forward to catching up again soon. See you later.
Chris, that was great. Appreciate it. Thank you.